So we've been doing a lot of work on how to find a thesis for a college essay that doesn't just prove the obvious, that doesn't say something predictable and boring. And in this video, I want to tell a story about a student I taught a couple of years ago. We'll call her Janet, and her struggles to write a paper. She came to my office for a conference with a draft of her paper, and I took a look at it, read about a paragraph, and it started something like this. The country music concert I went to last week in Charlotte, West Virginia, Charlottesville, I think it was, West Virginia, was the most exciting experience of my life. I put the paper down and I said to Janet, let me try to guess where you're going to go with this paper, what you're going to talk about. I would bet you're going to have a paper, you're going to have a paragraph in which you tell how great the music was, and another paragraph in which you talk about what good friends you made at the concert, and maybe another one about how exciting it was to be away from home and off on your own in another state for a weekend. And she looked at me and said, how did you read it so fast? I said, I didn't. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. Because papers about going away to a rock concert or a country music concert always say those things. and so therefore your paper is not going to be very interesting. It's too predictable. It just belabors the obvious. And Janet said, well, then maybe I should find a new topic. And I said, well, maybe, but let's just talk for a few minutes more about the concert and what happened there and how you felt about it and so forth. And maybe we can find something more interesting to say about that rock music, country music concert. So Janet told me this was her first semester at the community college, and she had 3 or 4, maybe 5 students who were taking a lot of the same classes she was. They'd gotten to know each other and would often meet on Friday afternoons in the cafeteria for lunch. And at one of these lunch meetings, one of the students in the group said, we're all going to go out to West Virginia to a country music concert next weekend. You want to go with us? And she had never done something like that, and she wasn't sure her parents would be very enthusiastic about it, but she said yes, she would like to do that. And so they said, okay, meet us in parking lot B at 4 o'clock next Friday afternoon. And she did. But when she got there, the 2 people she really liked in the group weren't there. They backed out. They weren't able to make it. And the one guy she really didn't like, in fact, she was a little bit afraid of him because he was kind of rough and had a lot of rough talk. And he was the one guy who was there, wouldn't you know it. And then there were a couple other people there that she didn't know, but she noticed they all had a lot of piercings and tattoos, and she was a fairly straight-laced suburban young woman, and she was feeling a little bit over her head, but she had said she was going to do it, and so she jumped in the van, and they slid the door closed, and off they went to West Virginia. They had a couple of coolers full of bottles of beer in the van, and they were drinking these at a pretty fast pace as they drove west, Janet told me. And when they would finish a beer, they would roll down the window and take the beer bottle and throw it out the window. And it crashed on the side of the road, and they all thought that was kind of funny. Except in one little town, the beer bottle flew out the window and hit a parked car and broke the windshield on a car, and they just kept on driving. And as they drove further and further west and drank more and more of that beer, the language got rougher and rougher in the car, and Janet began to feel actually a little afraid. And by the time they arrived at the state park in West Virginia, she had made a decision. She grabbed her knapsack, jumped out the door, and headed off into the crowd. And as she said to me in my office that day, there I was in the middle of 5,000 or 6,000 people, and I was the loneliest I'd ever been in my life. And I said, Janet, stop. How about that for a thesis? Now you've got something really interesting to say. I was in a crowd of 5,000 people, and I was the loneliest I'd ever been in my life. That's a great way to start the paper. And I asked her, why did you write about what a great, it sounds like it wasn't such a great experience. And she said, yeah, but I thought that's what if you're going to write a paper about a music concert, it ought to be about what a great experience it was. And I said, that was the very problem with that. It fit the formula for papers about rock music concerts. So now you've got a good thesis, I said to Janet. And I hope this story illustrates for you one more time the difference between writing something that's just going to be really hard to write an interesting paper about because it's too predictable and too obvious, and writing about something that in this case was really interesting and original and surprising, and as it turned out, Janet's paper was really quite good. So I hope this story helps you write a paper that's really quite good for your next assignment.